Imagine walking through the ancient deserts of the Middle East, dust swirling at your feet, the wind carrying echoes of stories whispered across centuries. Now imagine that some of those stories are still unfolding. According to Islamic tradition, there are 4 prophets who never died, 4 men chosen by God, preserved in time, whose existence still shapes spiritual consciousness today. And the question isn't just who they are, but why they remain. What if their survival is not only a miracle, but a message? In today's video, we begin uncovering this forgotten thread in Islamic history, a sacred tradition that claims 4 prophets remain alive by God's will until appointed moments yet to come. And as we explore each story, you'll begin to see how these lives are not just legends. They are blueprints for survival, resistance, and divine mercy in a broken world. Let's start with the most well-known of them all. 1. Prophet Jesus Isa, the awaited return. Among the 4, Prophet Isa, Jesus in Arabic, holds a unique place, not just in Islam, but in global prophecy. Unlike what many people think, Muslims do not believe Jesus was crucified. Instead, the Quran states that he was raised up by God. Surah An-Nisa 4-157-158. Not dead, not buried, but alive. Waiting, but waiting for what? According to authentic hadith, Jesus will return near the end of times, not as a new prophet, but as a just ruler to break the cross, kill the swine, and abolish the jizya tax on non-Muslims. He will defeat the Dajjal, the Antichrist, and usher in an age of justice before dying a natural death. Let's pause for a second here. Why does this matter? Because Jesus' survival, his very presence, connects Muslims and Christians in a deeply mysterious way. 2 of the world's largest religions, often seen as conflicting, are bound by a shared expectation: his return. Whether viewed through the lens of Islamic hadith or Christian eschatology, Jesus is the bridge. And it challenges us to ask, what does his delayed death represent? Maybe it's a reminder that time bends to divine will. That sometimes the most powerful answers don't come when we want, they come when we're ready. In many Islamic narrations, Jesus' descent will happen near Damascus, Syria, a land that has endured war. Displacement and suffering for over a decade, coincidence? Or is the land being prepared for something much greater? 2. Prophet Khidr, the hidden guide. The second prophet is shrouded in mystery and ambiguity. Al-Khidr. Some scholars debate whether he is truly a prophet or a righteous servant. But among the common Muslim understanding, Khidr is often accepted as a prophet, one still alive, still walking the earth, and still guiding those he's destined to help. The story of Khidr appears in Surah Al-Kahf, the cave, where Prophet Moses is told that there's someone more knowledgeable than he is. That person is Khidr, and the journey they take together is nothing short of mind-bending. Khidr damages a ship, kills a boy, repairs a wall, all seemingly unjust acts. Yet behind each is divine wisdom, unseen, misunderstood, but perfectly aligned with God's plan. The message here is clear: not all pain is punishment, and not all delays are denials. Now think about that. In a world obsessed with clarity and quick answers, Khidr's legacy is an uncomfortable but necessary truth. Sometimes what we call tragedy is actually protection. His presence reminds us that divine wisdom often hides behind apparent chaos. There are stories from India to Turkey of people claiming to have met a mysterious, ageless man with emerald robes who spoke only in riddles and guided them to safety. Are these myths, or traces of the same Khidr who helped Moses long ago? Khidr's story invites us to accept the unknown with humility. Not everything needs to be explained. Some things must simply be trusted. A word on miracles and time. You might be wondering, how are they still alive? Isn't this biologically impossible? In Islamic thought, prophets are not bound by the same physical laws we are. Their lives, and even their deaths, are subject to divine decree, not natural decay. What seems like fiction in our world might be fact in the unseen realm. Remember the story of the people of the cave of Shab al-Kaf. They slept for over 300 years, protected by God in a hidden place. Their story is mentioned in the very same chapter of the Quran as Withdrew. Why? Because Surah Al-Kaf is a chapter about trials of knowledge, wealth, power, and faith. And all of these intersect with the stories of these living prophets. Why? In today's digital world, it's easy to dismiss ancient stories as mere mythology. But these 4 prophets who never died aren't just characters from a forgotten book. They're symbols, the reminders of the unseen world, the endurance of divine wisdom, and the mysteries that still shape our lives. Whether you believe they're alive in a literal or metaphysical sense, the lessons they bring are timeless. Jesus shows us the power of patience and ultimate justice. Withdrew teaches us that divine wisdom may look like disorder. And in the next part, we'll explore the other 2 prophets, whose survival carries even deeper warnings and hope. Before we continue, if you found value so far, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments which of these stories resonates with you most. Are there times when you felt guided by something or someone you couldn't quite explain? Now get ready, because in part 2, we'll meet the prophet who disappeared into the wind, and another whose body lies in wait, preserved by God's command. In the first part of this journey, we talked about Jesus and Withdrew, 2 prophets whose ongoing presence speaks of divine justice and wisdom that goes beyond what we see. But there are still 2 more, and their stories are even stranger. These prophets didn't just survive, they vanished. Not into death, but into mystery. And their legacy isn't just about how they lived, but what their absence continues to teach us. 3. Prophet Ilyas Elijah, the prophet who never died. Let's talk about a prophet who appears only briefly in the Quran, yet his name still echoes across religious traditions. Ilyas, known as Elijah in the Bible, in Islamic belief. Ilyas was sent to the people of Baalbek in modern-day Lebanon, calling them to abandon idol worship and return to God. But what's most fascinating is what happens after his mission. The Quran does not record his death. And some Islamic traditions, supported by classical scholars like Ibn Kathir, suggest that Ilyas never died, but was raised up and continues to live. In other words, he disappeared. Sound familiar? Yes, just like Jesus. And just like Enoch or Idris, whom we'll talk about shortly, Ilyas' absence hints at something powerful. Not all divine stories are meant to be wrapped up neatly. There's an old Lebanese legend that every year on a mountaintop, Ilyas still appears, speaking words only a few can hear. Some say he walks among us like Withdrew, only revealing himself when God commands. What if Ilyas is more than just a figure of the past? What if he's a figure of waiting, of endurance? A prophet in the shadows, reminding us that even when we feel invisible, we are still known, still seen. 4. Prophet Idris Enoch, the Ascended One. Now we come to the 4th, and perhaps the most overlooked of these living prophets. Idris. Mentioned briefly in the Quran, Idris is described with these powerful words. And we raised him to a high station, Surah Maryam 1957. Idris, believed to be the biblical Enoch, was a man of deep contemplation, wisdom, and spiritual elevation. While many prophets received revelation, Idris was lifted into the heavens. And here's the thing, there's no record of his return. That's right, Islamic scholars say he was taken alive, body and soul, to a realm above our own. And then, like Jesus, he remains there waiting. What makes Idris unique is that he represents more than just prophecy. He represents ascension, growth, The possibility that a human being, through spiritual effort and divine favor, can rise beyond the ordinary. And isn't that something we all long for? In a world so focused on the material, Idris' story calls us back to the spiritual, to the idea that obedience, patience, and deep faith can literally elevate us. Some traditions even say he will return at the end of days as a witness to God's final judgment. If that's true, then his life isn't just a story, it's a countdown, what unites these four. Now pause for a moment and consider this. Why were these four prophets preserved? Why are they the ones who never tasted death like the rest? It's not random. Each of these men carries a message. Jesus Isa, the triumph of truth and the return of justice. Kidra, the mystery of divine wisdom in chaotic times. Ilyas, the strength to remain faithful in obscurity. Idris, the reward of spiritual elevation and patience. Think of it like a spectrum. Jesus and Idris were lifted upward, symbols of ascension and promise. Kidra and Ilyas remain among us, symbols of guidance and endurance. Two are hidden in heaven, two are hidden on earth. Together, they represent the full scope of human spiritual experience, the visible and invisible, the waiting and the rising. And in a time when it feels like the world is unraveling, these stories offer something profound. Assurance that God's plans are still in motion, that not everything sacred has vanished, that some things are just waiting to return. Real-life reflections. Where do we see this today? You might be asking, okay, but what does this have to do with my life? Let's make it real. Have you ever gone through something you couldn't explain, only to look back and realize it saved you? Maybe a door slammed shut and you were devastated. Then a few months later, you realized it was for your protection. That's a Kidra moment, or maybe you felt invisible. Like no one sees your effort, your faith, your quiet sacrifices. That's a lesson from Ilyas. Or you've doubted whether God still moves in the world, and then out of nowhere something happened that could only be described as divine timing. That's Jesus, not just as a prophet, but as a sign of hope and return. And if you've ever felt like the world is too much, that you just want to rise above the noise and be with God, that's Idris, the silent ascender. In the final part of this series, we'll dive deeper into what their survival means for us today, how modern conflicts in the Muslim world, and between Muslims and others, still echo these ancient truths. We'll also reflect on one final, crucial question. What can we learn from the silence of the living prophets? Because sometimes silence is not absence, it's power. If this video is sparking thoughts in your mind, or if you've ever felt a spiritual moment you couldn't explain, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you won't miss the final chapter. We've uncovered the stories of four prophets Islam teaches are still alive. Jesus' essay, Kidra, Ilyas Elijah, and Idris Enoch. Their lives are mysteries, unfinished, preserved, prophetic. But this isn't just a tale of the past. The deeper question we need to ask is, why does it matter today? What do these prophets, suspended between history and destiny, reveal about us, about this moment in time, and about what might be coming? Let's break it down. A world in crisis, and the prophets still among us. We live in a time of overwhelming uncertainty. Nations rise and fall. The environment deteriorates. Identity, truth, and even the concept of God are constantly challenged. People feel unanchored, like the world has lost its soul. And maybe that's why these prophets are still here, because their mission isn't over. Jesus Isa will return in the end times, not just as a prophet, but as a judge. His second coming will bring clarity in an age of confusion. Kidra still walks among us, offering guidance that makes no sense at first, but leads to mercy and justice in the long run. Elias remains hidden, possibly preparing for a time when his voice will once again be needed. Idris, the one lifted to the heavens, reminds us that divine elevation is possible even in a decaying world. Their very existence is a reminder that God hasn't left the building. He's just waiting for the right time to act, as he always has. The echo of end times. Are we already there? Many Islamic scholars believe the continued life of these prophets is not incidental. It's eschatological. In simpler terms, it's about the end times. Isa's return is explicitly prophesied in hadiths. He'll descend from the heavens in Damascus, break the cross, kill the Antichrist Dajjal, and bring justice to a fractured world. Khidr and Ilyas, both said to attend Hajj every year, are seen as spiritual witnesses, still guiding the Ummah in secret. Idris, though less mentioned, is often seen as one who may return to bear witness when judgment unfolds. Their stories whisper this unsettling truth: the end is not chaos, it's completion. The world isn't spinning out of control, it's moving toward prophecy. Whether we like it or not. Personal story, a modern encounter with the sacred. Let me share a story from a friend of mine, someone who spent time traveling in the Middle East. He told me about an old man he met in Jordan near the ruins of Petra. The man had no name, spoke in riddles, and offered a single piece of advice. Sometimes destruction is the door to mercy. 2 days later, my friend's trip was abruptly canceled due to a local uprising. The area he was meant to visit was bombed. He would have been there. To this day, he wonders, was that man just a man, or someone else entirely? We're not saying Khidr was in Petra that week. But we are saying that the world is more layered than we think. The sacred is closer than we realize. And the prophets, while they may still be speaking, what do these prophets teach us today? Let's bring this home. Each of the 4 prophets symbolizes something we're desperately missing in the modern world. Jesus Isa teaches us that truth will prevail, not with weapons, but with wisdom and mercy.